Let us actually undertake a clear study of what kind of benefits have been apportioned by the Indian state for the welfare of the SC/ST communities in Tamil Nadu, and how many of them have benefited to what extent. Has the rise of Dravidianism translated to reduction in violence against these groups? Who is responsible for the commission of this violence? It's mighty convenient to constantly paint the Brahmin as this venomous snake. In fact, he was the one to come out. I think there was this Dravidianist poet Bharatidasan who basically came out with this saying that if you see a snake and you see a Brahmin, kill the Brahmin first. This reeks and smacks of Nazi propaganda. Every year, the DMK makes it a point to come out with a caricature of a pig wearing the Janevu. How does this not attract Section 295A? How does this not attract hatred for a particular group? There is not a single sphere of activity which is untouched by caste.
Close to 50 years?
Right.
Since the Dravid parties have been there. Essentially, they talk about anti-casteism.
Right.
More than, we can talk about various things.
Right.
Today, Udaynidhi has talked about sanatan.
Right.
But it's anti-casteism, basically, right? But if they have been in power for so many years in one form or the other,
they haven't been able to do anything.
Why have they not been
able
to
to eliminate? There's literature to show that ever since the rise of Dravidianist ideology, the number of cases where the establishments or the settlements of the SC/STs have been set to fire, and the kind of atrocities that they've been subjected to by people who claim to fight in their name. So here's what happens. The strategy has always been this, whether you call it the communist movement or social justice movement anywhere. A lot of landed groups which have a certain sense of antipathy towards the non-landed priestly community choose to use the shoulder of the actually affected parties to fire their bullets from. Right? In the name of social justice. Now, what social justice? Who has benefited at the end of this? Let us actually undertake a clear study of what kind of benefits have been apportioned by the Indian state for the welfare of the SC/ST communities in Tamil Nadu, and how many of them have benefited to what extent. Has the rise of Dravidianism translated to reduction in violence against these groups? Who is responsible for the commission of this violence? People who are less than 2.5% of the population in Tamil Nadu today, who've never wielded the weapon, which is the Tamil Brahmins, or others. Let's have this conversation. It's mighty convenient to constantly paint the Brahmin as this venomous snake. In fact, he was the one to come out. I think there was this Dravidianist poet Bharatidasan who basically came out with this saying that if you see a snake and you see a Brahmin, kill the Brahmin first. This reeks and smacks of Nazi propaganda. And Nazis used the television, or let's say the movies, and so was the case with the Dravidianists as well. There's another thing that you must ask yourself. Okay, you want to talk about egalitarianism, equality, fine. Why do you want to remove caste names only from roads? Remove it altogether from each of your ministers' names. And let's do away with reservations altogether. Why don't you have this conversation? Equality should mean no reservation in your dense head. Because that's your approach to equality otherwise.
Sai, it's over 100 years since the Dravid movement. Now, they wanted to eradicate casteism. Sanatan was one of the words, but then they wanted to eradicate casteism. DMK is in power right now. Why is it that casteism is not over and it's still practiced? And there is now a new form of casteism which is coming up. So here I'm reading out from an article in the Indian Express. It says, English media, it says, in this belt in southern Tamil Nadu, known for violent caste conflicts between OBCs and Dalits, these wristbands are markers that tell children who's a friend, who isn't. Though there are no written rules, students usually know their colors by the time they reach high school. It's red and yellow for Tevars, blue and yellow for Nadars, saffron for Yadavs, all socially and politically powerful Hindu communities that come under the most backward classes category, MBCs. While students of the Dalit community of Pallars wear wristbands in green and red, and Arundhatiyars also wear green and red, Dalits wear green, black and white. So my question, Sai, is that after 100 years since the Dravidian movement, why is caste-based slavery of sorts still prevalent?
Heart of the social justice movement should have translated to being a paradise of social justice.
Yeah.
That hasn't happened, right? Okay, I'll explain how fundamentally anti-scientific, historically stupid the entire myth of Dravidianism is. So around what we call Avaniyatam, which is Upakarma Day, in Shravana Mas, what we do, so Brahmins change their Janayu. Okay, it's not a caste mark. First of all, across the board, several castes wear the Janayu. It's not just the Brahmin. It's never been the sole preserve of the Brahmin. Every community which has been deemed as a Dvija has worn it.
Twice born.
Yes. So when I was doing my mechanical engineering, the one who was teaching foundry to me, so foundry is where you actually make molds and dies and whatnot. It requires a lot of physical labor. That man basically said, you Aryans can't do this. We also wear Punal. Look at us. We also do it. I said, sir, where is this coming from? No, he said, see, I'm a Vishwakarma. I wear it, but even I can do this. So people in each of those fields, you'll see pictures in the British period of potters and whatnot wearing the Punal. Why is this important? Because around the Upakarma Day, which is when you change the Janayu, every year the DMK makes it a point to come out with a caricature of a pig wearing the Janayu. How does this not attract Section 295A? How does this not attract hatred for a particular group? In the name of social justice, how long are you going to target and come after this one particular community? Across the board, this has happened in this country. I am open to all the hate mail that's going to come towards me for having said this. I am open to it. I'll swallow the poison. I have no problems. Someone has to do the wishpan. I'll be the person to do it. I have no problems. But there is hypocrisy in Indian political, social, and caste discourse across the board on this particular subject. This needs to be spoken of. It's finally important. People are happy when I speak of decoloniality as long as it supports them and helps them. Chalo, I'll use decoloniality in a different sense now. I'll talk about this as well.
What about Bihar and Uttar Pradesh? They've had caste-based parties.
Right.
Is it different from Tamil Nadu?
The impression that Dravidianist ideologues want to give to the rest of the world is that the South, and especially Tamil Nadu, is a paradise of development, is a paradise of caste, lack of casteism, so on and so forth. I am sorry, that is not the case. From the film industry to every possible industry, there is not a single sphere of activity which is untouched by caste. And politics of Tamil Nadu is certainly caste entrenched. They don't get to hold this moral high ground with anybody else at all. When they constantly say, you should see these arrogant, absolutely abysmal posts on Twitter where they say, you North Indians, this and that, you come from the cow belt, you come to Tamil Nadu, we are this and that. What are you talking about? Really, what are you talking about? We have lived in this place. In several parts of and here's the thing. Traditionally, Tamilians have been extremely welcoming of people with talent. The Tamil film industry, for the better part of it, was run even by Telugus, because Madras used to be the hub for everyone at that point. The icons that you have supported, from MGR to everybody else, they have been non-Tamilians. So Tamilians as a people are welcoming. But the political discourse of Tamil Nadu is narrow-minded, has positioned itself and pitted itself against the rest of Bharat to the extent that when a soldier of this country who comes back home or who comes from a different part of this country goes to Tamil Nadu is lynched. This cannot happen. This is dangerous. Okay, let's assume for a moment this had happened in Punjab. What would all of us be saying? Oh, Khalistan is again on the rise. If this had happened to a soldier of this country at the hands of Khalistanis in Punjab, you would have said that Khalistanism is back.
No, Sai, it's happening in Karnataka also. Auto drivers who write out there, unless you speak in Kannada, I'm not going to. It's happening in many places.
No, I wouldn't agree with that, and there's a reason for this. Think about it this way. You go to Maharashtra or you go to Karnataka, what are they basically worried about? The loss of the culture of that land. That is a legitimate human sentiment across the board.
It happened in the 60s and things, lungis, they were called the South
I am
Indians.
not going to justify all the measures that were used to further this particular sentiment. Or when you say, lungi uthao, pungi bajao and all that, whatever they said, I don't agree with it. I'm not saying I agree with the means. But what are you looking at? If the very same sentiment were to be aired by someone from the Northeast or Assam, you'd immediately say, oh, there is some sense to it. Why don't Kannadigas get to say this? Why don't Telugus get to say this? Why don't Tamilians get to say this? I am not going to stand even for one bit to say that one Indian cannot visit another part of Bharat. One Bharatiya must have the right to visit every part of Bharat.
And buy property.
100%. Buy property, marry, settle. There cannot be any kind of restrictions there. However, what do they expect? You've come here, you lived for generations together. At least speak our language. You want an example? The what is this? Recently, at one of my public engagements there, members of the Jain community came and spoke. You talk, or rather, you look at them, you will not feel that they are from any other part of the country
You're
except
talking
Tamil
about
Nadu.
Karnataka.
Karnataka as well as in Tamil Nadu.
Yeah.
The Marwadis of Tamil Nadu. You speak with them. They will speak Tamil. So they have embraced this because the nature of the Bharatiya basically is that he would want to embrace the local culture if he chooses to settle there. It's not as if we are itinerants going from one place to another without mingling with the local community at all. So the expectation that if you are here, at least pick up the language. When I was studying engineering, a lot of my friends were Maitais from Manipur. I can name them. I don't want to name them because of the circumstances today, but very dear friends. I don't want them to be affected because of their affiliation with me. They picked up Tamil within 4 years of education. So the insistence that first learn our language is not a wrong insistence. That is to ensure that you're not submerged in the deluge of globalization and this cosmopolitanism, because cosmopolitanism usually pits itself against the urge to preserve your culture and language. That is human.
Personally, I feel more languages you know in India, better it is for you.
100%. All of us should be polyglots.
Agreed.